This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 448. I'm Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy Adam Emmert. As Adam coming off, maybe, as far as games that I've gone to and watched in person, this is probably the second worst game I've ever been to.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I could see exactly how that would be. So honestly, I should probably thank Brittany for getting me sick right before and not being able to make it out. It was probably for the better, I guess. That was capital U, capital G, capital E. That was as capital ugly as it gets, man. And I think, we broke it down on the post-game show a little bit. Clinton and I know you and Clinton got into it on 3 in, 3 out. And, we've kind of gone through the nuts and bolts of the game quite a bit, it seems like. Yeah. And we can get into some of that still here again. But I feel like out of this game, there's been a lot of big picture topics that I've been hearing floated around throughout the interwebs. And so it'll be interesting to see how you're feeling after seeing that crap show live and in person. In comparison to maybe the TV copy.
Yeah, I don't know what there is really to cover when a game is that lopsided, which is why I was kind of starting off with comparing it to one of the worst losses that I have ever been to, or maybe the worst loss that I was ever at, which happened to be Pete Carroll's first season as head coach of the Seahawks, and they're playing the New York Giants. And I want to say it was 31-0 at halftime.
Yikes.
Do you remember
was that
that
a
game?
Whitehorse game?
That was a Whitehorse game. Yep. He was the quarterback, and it did not go well. In fact, I distinctly remember walking back to the car with my mom because we decided to leave at halftime. It's the only game that I have ever left early. And when you're down 31-0 at halftime, and you have an 8-hour drive ahead of you, and because at that point there's no chance. I can kind of see leaving a little bit early, and I feel like I was okay doing that. It wasn't necessarily the case with this game because, you got to the point where it was maybe a minute to go in the second half, and you're going, just get a stop. And man, if you hold them to a field goal even, then you're only down a touchdown. And yes, they have the ball coming out of the half, but then maybe you can turn things around and make something happen. But the way it ended up, giving up a touchdown right before the half, coming out, and then allowing a field goal drive, and it just kind of snowballed from there with the turnover once they tried to get back in it. And by that point, then it felt like it was over. But I still didn't leave early.
Yeah, good for you, man. Like a good fan there. Look, of all the people in the world to have an excuse about leaving a game early, anybody that has a 5+ hour just on a regular day drive commute back to their home, I think you're okay with trying to get a jump on it. So 8 hours definitely falls into that.
It's a lot different than just trying to get a jump on the people getting out to the parking lot.
Exactly. For your, to drive back to Issaquah or wherever, right? But at the end of the day, Brandon, you're kind of right. I mean, you get to the end of the first half before the Bills score right there, and you're like, boy, they've had their opportunities. The Bills have played relatively sloppy. I know that lights a couple Bills fans' hair on fire hearing that. There was a couple in the comments after the post-game show that really didn't like that comment. And it's like, well, Josh threw a pick, and I don't care if the receiver slipped, and you had a zillion penalties, and you also had a fumble on that last drive that converted a third freaking down somehow. And
Josh Allen thought he could just throw the ball on the ground and kick it to his player for a first down. Funny how that worked out.
Exactly. And when you see that, and then they end up scoring the touchdown, like you had hope right up to that last minute or so, and then you're like, wait a second. This is starting to feel like one of those days. And, maybe this is a good place to start here, Brandon. Was this just one of those days, or do you think this is more indicative of some bigger flaws?
Ooh, I think it is indicative of some flaws. I mean, it was also one of those days. I mean, it was It was a bad Geno Smith day. It was a bad special teams day. It was a bad offensive strategy day. It was a bad defense. I mean, a defense going up against a really good offense. And so really, in terms of the areas that I have the least problems with, it probably starts with the defense, just because Josh Allen, Bills are really good. I expected them to give up points, and they didn't let me down there in with that respect, I suppose.
I think defensively, the most disappointing part for me is that you kind of had your dudes out there. It's not like we were missing a bunch of guys up front, and they got bullied all day. Absolutely bullied. I was listening to Robert Mays speak on Hawkblogger's show and from the Athletic Football Show, and I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch, but he was mentioning that the Bills throughout the game ran this same play out of 11 personnel, bringing the tight end back to the weak side and basically just leaving the backside safety and corner unblocked. And they ran it again and again and again. And the Seahawks kept getting pushed back 3, 4, 5 yards. And that right there, that's the part to me that I'm like, no, this is indicative of some really massive structural problems for this team. And the funny part to me, Brandon, is that you and I, for this entire offseason, probably the season before and the season before that, we've been over here being like, dude, you can't build a team like this. You got to be trenches focused. And I heard almost every other show being like, no, this is just a P problem. Draft JSN. Like, let's make sure we pay DK. Let's draft a quarterback. Like, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And it is honestly hilarious just in this last week of listening to other shows, which I don't often do, but decided to on this one. Everybody's now, oh man, they got to do something about this offensive line. And boy, they need to do something more in the defensive trenches in the front seven. And John Schneider, he's neglected this the whole time. That's fine. And I'm glad that they're on board now, but it does annoy the heck out of me that these people were shouting down everybody on Twitter who was like, no, it's not a Geno problem. It's an offensive line problem. No, it's not necessarily a Pete problem. It's a defensive trenches problem.
Uh-huh.
No, this is probably more John Schneider problem in a lot of ways than Pete. And I just want everybody to remember that when they're listening to their shows throughout the next couple of years, all the different shows, remember the ones that tell you these things are like this before they happen and not just react to it after.
Yeah, there's something to that. I am curious though, with regard to the defensive trenches, how where would you point to and say, I mean, other than Draymond Jones, who got injured in this game and his one pressure ended up getting nullified by a Devin Witherspoon penalty where the wide receiver just ran straight into him. Right. He relatively ineffective. I know he got injured during the game, but it has been a relatively consistent problem. But I feel like Derek Hall, I mean, he's been among the leaders in getting pressure. Maybe not the greatest run defender on the team, but got Byron Murphy added through the draft. You went out and added free agents. You know, Jaron Reed is probably the one veteran presence on this team where you look at, and he made himself very well known going after Derek Hall after the penalty. Gosh, even as far away up in the stands I could go, oh my gosh, 2 Seahawks players are really getting into it. And I knew it was Derek Hall because he had committed the penalty. Obviously afterward, I found out that it was Jaron Reed that was getting in his face, and not a surprise at all, considering he's probably the one guy who is the vocal leader on this defense.
He is, and I want to get to that here in a bit. But to your point about defensive trenches, like you kind of started going through it, right? Draymond. When Draymond was signed, both you and I sat here, Brandon, on this show and went, cool. He's a defensive line player, but he's more known for pass rushing than being a run stuffer. Yeah. And he's kind of light in the pants. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not excited about it. And he has been dreadful for the money. I mean, it really hasn't been good.
No.
And then you bring up Derek Hall, perimeter player. Boye Mafe, perimeter player. Okay, fine. They finally drafted a dude on the interior this last year. And I like Byron Murphy. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. But in terms of defensive tackles, again, on the lighter side, this isn't a big dude who's going to out just physical NFL linemen on a regular basis. Like he's going to be more of a technician and more of a speed oriented defensive tackle. Jared Reed, again, on the lighter side for defensive tackle and play strength. Leo Williams, again, more of the athletic defensive tackle type. They finally bring in one dude with some beef in Hankins, and he's 96 years old. Like, so at the end of the day, when they start getting pushed around, you're like, okay, so your pass rush front, which is what you've built up front, can't stop the run. Well, freaking duh. Like, it's so obvious, and it's really difficult to watch week in and week out when you know that you can't be anything but a high variable team when you're mismatched up front in the most fundamental part of the football game.
I think when I heard some of Coach Mike's comments this week, though, it almost sounds like we may need to be content with being a high variable football team at this point, because one of the quotes that stood out to me was him talking about how they need to accept some sunk costs and focus on what they're good at. And I look at what this team is good at. They're good at throwing the football when DK is on the field. That was a problem this past week, not having DK out there, just in terms of the way that they were able to attack the Bills, and the Bills knew it.
Let's put a pin in that. I want to come back to that one too.
I do want to come back to that too. The other part of it is they're good at rushing the passer, and they're good at. I think the other thing that Coach Mike put out is that they're good at coverage on special teams, which that I would say that they've been good in that area. So I think all those things lead to being a high variance team for the rest of the season.
Yes, without question. Look, when it comes to what are they good at, they're a good passing team, not if and when DK Metcalf is on the field, because I again, let's have that discussion here in a second, but they're a good passing team when they face a defense that is mediocre or less, because they are so poor up front.
Okay.
It has more to do with level of competition
than
it does whether or not DK Metcalf plays or not. And
it makes a difference, though. We can get into it
more.
now. Because the way that there are a couple things that this game, I think, taught us. And I'm starting to believe what I'm hearing from some of the coaches when they say, they recognize that they really want to do one thing. Like, they recognize that it's really important to run the football. They've talked about that. We've talked about that. I believe them when they say that they think that it's important, which then leads me to believe they don't think that this team could do it. Like, they don't think that the guys up front are good enough at run blocking to do it consistently early and win. I think that's got to be the case, because you can't talk about how important it is for this many weeks and not do it if you actually believe that you're good at it.
I don't think you can sit and talk about it from the second that you were hired and brought in all of the coaches that you hired, and then come in and not do it from training camp on. There's no possible way these guys are going to do it and be good at it if you bring in somebody to run one half of the football team in the offense that doesn't give two craps about running the football. I don't care what he says to my face. I don't believe him anymore. You say you believe the coaches. I think it's the exact opposite for me. Look, I watched them try to run a couple of times, like 2 or 3 times into a light box, and then just give up. Oh, can't do it, won't do it. Okay, well, that's fine, but what are you doing in the pass game? Well, jack crap, because they're teeing off on you because they know exactly what's coming their way, and now they got a lead. Like, it's lip service from the coaches, and it's a lack of doing it from the jump that is the problem in running the football. Because I watch so many of these other terrible football teams that are able to run to the football with some success with worse quote unquote talent. Like, it's because of a mindset and a philosophy in program that is instilled early on. And this coaching staff didn't do it. They're late to the jump. They're getting jellied now, and they don't know what to do about it. And I'm extremely frustrated with the messaging in comparison to the action. And it doesn't line up to me.
No, I think they are actually bad. They saw it in practice, and we see it executed. It is bad, and it confirms then what they've seen in practice. And so they're speaking to the fact that...
So how do you explain the games that K9 and the run game are good?
I think that K9 has
so
the
bad
ability
on it, you can't do
to... It's when he's bouncing outside, making guys miss. We saw in this game, you talk about level of competition, the Bills defenders were the first guy to K9 if they made the tackle, and they frequently did. If he would have made any of those tacklers miss, he would have had huge gains. But for the one guy that got there first and took him down, they limited him. And the ones up the middle, I mean, forget about it. There was no blocking. I mean, when they got down to the goal line and they put in their heavy package, and that's the time where, as an offense, you're saying, okay, here's all our big dudes. Our big dudes are going to beat your big dudes. And we got whooped.
Are you talking down by the goal line?
Yeah. Yeah. Put in Brady Russell as a fullback. And immediately, as soon as Geno turns around to hand off the football, there's two dudes that are 3 yards deep, and K9 doesn't eat. Now, if he would have bounced it out to the left, there wouldn't have been anybody there to get him. But he again, the first guy there got him down. So
let me ask you this, Brandon. Throughout the year, based on the way that this offense is executed out on the field and the plays are called, if you had to guess, would you guess that they practice passing or running more? I mean, I'm just asking.
I would guess that they practice passing out of the shotgun almost all the time, because when we saw Geno get down under center near the goal line, it apparently didn't seem like they knew how to operate under center, because Geno gets stepped on. And
exactly.
I've gone back and forth about whether or not it was Geno's fault, whether it was Connor Williams' fault. Yeah. I'm down to the point where I think it's the coach's fault for not practicing this enough, that they don't know how to get their feet in the right spots. Because, one, Connor Williams has to put one of his feet back because he's immediately taking on a blocker. And, Geno has to know where that foot is going to be, so that way he doesn't get stepped on.
Right. And this is exactly my point. So at the end of the day, you go and line up at OTAs, and coach is like, oh, we're definitely weaker at running the football than throwing the football right now. Okay, let's practice more throwing the football then. Like, how do you ever get better at the things that you're weaker at if you don't triple down on making yourself better at that? Like, there's no, and not only that, the other part of this argument of, not yours, but just in the ether of, well, the line's just no good, so you just can't do it, that drives me crazy, is they point at a game like the Buffalo game. They're like, see, there is no blocking up front. Okay. So of one of the best teams on your schedule that you faced, and most complete teams that you faced, you couldn't do it against that one team, and now you just can't do it, abandoning it. We don't know if we could have done it or not done it against Detroit, because we never even tried. Like, against the 49ers, it looked like it was going to be a slog. But that's the part of it that drives me crazy. Like, nobody points at the Atlanta game and says, look at that, we can run the football. Nobody points at the Dolphins game and go, look at that, we can run the football. But because K9 averaged like 6 yards a carry. Like, no, we only focus on the bad ones and say, nope, can't do it.
I think when we talk about how the team goes along moving forward, sure, you could look back at it now and say, hey, we should have practiced such and such more in the offseason. Now you're in it, and now you're 8 games through the season. And that's why I think Coach Mike is kind of in this position. Well, now we have to focus on what we do well as to what we don't do well. And sure, maybe in some of those games where you realize you are able to be a little bit more physical than the team that you're going up against, then maybe you do work on some of that stuff. But I think when this game, one of the things that demonstrated it for me too is this switching between Bradford and Haynes. And Haynes was not good in the run game.
No.
And we did see that Coach Mike pretty much said that, Bradford's going to get all the snaps going into this game. I mean, the plan would be injuries may happen or that sort of thing. But, Bradford's the guy now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It has been displayed not just in one game, but in multiple games that Phil Haynes does not have the physicals. Christian Haynes, I'm sorry. I don't know why I always go to Phil Haynes, but I do.
Because they played the same position and they have the same last name. That's why.
I know. You just think I could get that straight, but I can't.
That's okay. Jordan Love plays safety for our team still, according to Clinton. So
that's true.
It happens to all of us.
That's true.
I feel like Jordan Love not too long ago.
I feel like we're misusing Jordan Love's talents in the secondary. I think we're misusing that. But
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, you're right. I think it should be Bradford going forward. And then that does get to the sunk cost comment. And I heard Salk talk about it in one of their shows after the interview. And the reason he asked it was the idea of, okay, so you got these sunk costs. Now, what do you do about it? Do you double down on the things that you do good and just forget the bad and try to fix the totally unacceptable, the stuff that's actually killing you? Just try to fix that part and then double down on the great stuff, or do you also try to fix the stuff that's just not very good?
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this point, because you are right, we can't get in a time machine and go back and hire a different offensive coordinator and make smart decisions. At this point, what we have to do is go, okay, what can we do going forward to build the proper identity of this team for the next few years to come under Coach Mike Macdonald? Because this isn't a serious football team, and it's not going to be a serious football team this year. Like that, we're 8 games in now. This team is what it is, and it's a middling, frustrating, not really playoff worthy, closer to the Cardinals than they are the Niners type football team.
Inconsistent. It was funny because listening to one of those interviews and hearing Coach Mike like being asked what this team does well, like he mentioned a couple things, but then all he kept going to was the inconsistency, and it just made me realize, yes, this team does do inconsistency really well so far this season.
It does. So, did you take the sunk cost comment as, okay, we're just going to have to scrap some of the concepts that we don't do well? Or was this kind of like, we're going to have to scrap some of these players at some point because this isn't going to work at all? Or we're going to have to scrap some of these coaches at some point because it doesn't work at all? Like, was it just like, okay, let's take the playbook in? I know Brock and Salk had a hard time parsing between simplifying and just reducing the volume of the playbook. Just reducing the volume of the playbook. The stuff that you do is still complicated. It's just less of it. Like, where do you think that was?
I got from his answer, and I thought he even said it was less about the X's and O's, which leaves personnel. So, and coaches, I suppose you would put as part of that too. It led me more toward the idea of personnel, and then to see that change of, Christian Haynes being the, set to the backup as opposed to competing for the starting job. That leads me to believe, and seeing the trade for Ernest Jones, that leads me to believe that they're viewing players more as the sunk cost than the X's and O's part of it.
Gotcha. So when you're watching this team, Brandon, and you're looking at just the offensive unit, the defensive unit, or even special teams, do you see a cohesive message and philosophy for any of those three units?
I don't. I'm curious. Do you?
I don't. And I'm trying to contrast that with the idea of and parse out in my mind. I haven't worked through it completely and come down where I think on this. It does feel like there's not buy-in from the players, especially defensively. It just feels like there's still that freelancing going on that was under Pete, or just a lack of understanding about what's going on. The energy, the effort, the frustration, like it just doesn't feel like it's there. They just get mad at each other and snipe at each other when somebody screws up, like the Hall Reid thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking, last night, in one thing that kept coming back to me over and over and over again is Coach Mike being a young coach that took a bunch of different all-star coaches from all sorts of different staffs, threw them all together, a very novel and unique approach to doing it. No doubt about it. And that's interesting. And it could very well come together and be outstanding, in the next 3 years. It absolutely could. But I think about that, and I think about Pete Carroll's time early in the league with the Jets and the Patriots and being fired, and him talking about what it meant to really sit down and actually develop his philosophy, develop his language, find the coaches that can preach that for him, that they're all on the exact same cohesive page. I think Dan Campbell did that his first year in Detroit, even with bad personnel. Like they were playing hard and were competitive in a ton of games with a god awful roster compared to this one. And I watched this roster play, and it feels like I'm watching 7 coaching staffs trying to implement their stuff together as one. And I just don't know that Coach Mike has had enough time in his career to really develop that philosophy, the language, and the style of which he wants to go about everything. And I think that's the biggest number one issue with this football team.
Well, and that's why I think when we went into this year, it was kind of that idea of patience, because I don't think as a first-time head coach, you necessarily know what you don't know. And so it's not until you have a full season and you can kind of work through some of those things and go, oh, so it's, sure, you can have Leslie Frazier on your staff, but I don't think until you actually feel it and go through it and then have to do some of these problem-solving things that come up as head coach that you can really start to develop that philosophy. Shoot, it took Pete getting fired from 2 jobs before he developed that philosophy. So I don't expect Coach Mike to have it right away. So, but I also think that he is that guy that is smart enough that can work to develop that and then implement it. I don't know if I'm necessarily have much buy-in, though, in terms of, gosh, we all kind of thought that, oh, well, Coach Mike's going to come in, and if things aren't going his way, he's gonna start, putting heads together and that sort of thing to make things happen. I'm not getting that impression so far that he's that authoritarian head coach that is going to make things happen immediately if things aren't going his way, because we've seen him talk about things now, and it kind of tends to be some of the similar things that he's saying after multiple games. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's just, I think we need to recognize that.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a skull thumper. No. That's for sure. And I think this leads interestingly to the conversation you hear everywhere right now about quote unquote leadership on this team.
Oh, sure. Well, that was because Richard Sherman brought it up in his podcast this past week.
Oh, yeah. Him and every other, person on the internet, like, even in instant post-game shows. So like independently, like so many people pointing to this lack of quote unquote leadership on the team. And to me, it's not that there's nobody on the team that's a leader. To me, it's that the message in the goal in the process in which to have a disciplined consistent football team is not a cohesive message. I think you got a lot of leaders trying their best one way or the other to pull this team through, but it just turns into white noise.
Yeah, I could see that, especially because that was another thing that when I heard Richard Sherman say it on his show and talk about, oh, well, you miss Bobby Wagner because of his leadership. Well, he was here last year, and it's not like he was able to lead his way through helping out that defense towards success. There's plenty of people on this defense that I would point to as capable leaders, but leadership takes execution too.
Oh, without question. And, and all those who will point to Geno not being a leader because they slow-mo freeze framed his face when it looked like he was almost kind of sort of crying. Like, get out of here. Like, that's it. He is not a demonstrably worse leader than Russell Wilson. He's not.
Yeah.
Different styles.
Sure.
And maybe Russ was a slightly better leader. Okay. But to act like Geno's not a leader at all on this team is, well, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I don't get that one for the life of me. I think the leadership topic is overblown by quite a bit. To me, it's more of a lack of focused messaging and language. And I went back and I listened to some Pete stuff from, defining how he got to that in the stuff that he was aiming for. And I mean, it was so crystal clear from him that he'd come to the podium and we all could tell you almost verbatim what he was going to say.
Sure.
Mike, I feel like right now he's searching hard for a lot of answers. And not to say that it can't ever get better, get rid of him, he's over his skis, you'll never figure it out. I'm not trying to say that. But like right now, for this moment in time, he's over skis and he is searching.
I think that's overblowing it a little bit too, just because when you take into account young coach, they for the most part, they beat the bad teams that they should beat outside of the Giants. They've lost to the good teams, which going into the season, you go, yeah, those teams are going to be likely more talented than the Seahawks team. So you would expect losses to teams like the Bills and the Niners and the Lions, which, they might be the best team in the entire NFL right now. And so I don't know if I'm willing to necessarily concede that it can't end up being a successful season.
I think then we have to talk about the definition of success for this season. Cause at this point, man, like I don't give a crap if they make the playoffs or not. They're not going anywhere anyways.
Sure.
I don't care. The actual win losses, I kind of don't care at this point. What I'm looking for as success going forward for this year is, I've seen people bring up the Dan Campbell Lions a few times in comments and things like that. And, well, he had to clean house. He had to get rid of all his dudes and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, okay, that's sort of true. Like, he inherited a really bad roster, a roster that is way worse than the one that Mike McDonald just inherited.
Sure. And
by the halfway mark of that season, that team played with a physical Dan Campbell gambling identity. Like you knew what that team was. It was just, now it's just a matter of changing the pieces to fit it. Right. But you saw the players playing in that image. The Cards last year, they played with a feistiness and competitiveness that even with a probably 31st worst roster in the league type team, were in almost every single game. Like, okay. And then you see that same thing this year. I don't see that with this team this year with the Seahawks so far. I don't see like a unified identity of what they're trying to build going forward, even if it comes in the form of losses in the short term. And that's what I want to see over the next 8 games for me to be like, yeah, this season ended in a success.
That's fair. I still think that part of their identity that Coach Mike wants is, and I brought this up to you before, and I know you've kind of scoffed at it, but he keeps repeating it, that he wants to be a team that starts fast. And maybe not the greatest identity, but because it is hard to really for that to be something that you build on. Especially going back to this game against the Bills, man, when you're trying to start fast against a Bills defense that knows that you don't have, either you don't have or you aren't willing to try and beat them deep. Man, they were sitting on everything in front of them. Like they had no worries. And that's why I talked about DK a little bit and how he impacted this game by not being out there. I don't think that they were worried about getting beat deep by anyone. And when I talk about some of the players that I'm starting to believe some of the things that are being said just based on usage, I don't think JSN's a downfield receiving threat, because this would have been the game to use him in that way, in that DK role of going downfield. And I know he has some speed, so why didn't we use him that way?
Because the offensive line is poor and you can't block a really good pass rushing defense. And there's a reason why they were sitting on all the receivers. It could have been 4 DK Metcalf standing out there on the field at the same time, and they would have sat on all those routes too, because they knew the quarterback wasn't going to have any time. I heard a few of the other
more time to throw than Josh Allen did on average this whole game. And
right. Because the Seahawks maddeningly do not play up on and sit on everything up front and take away all that stinking easy crap. They haven't under Pete Carroll. They haven't with Coach Mike yet. And it's unbelievably frustrating.
Harder on the run defense too.
I know. It's so maddening to watch. And look, I just heard a lot of the other podcasters talking about, oh, if DK's out there like this, if you didn't realize that DK is a difference maker on this offense, you do now. Oh. Boy, look at the difference with DK out there. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what game were you watching?
Having DK out there makes no difference in this game. I was just thinking in terms of the way and the style that Bills defense came out and played. Sure. And I think that there were enough times where Geno had a little bit of time to look downfield and go downfield if the opportunity was there. But Tyler wasn't getting downfield. Shoot, Tyler only caught one pass. Jake Bobo only caught one pass. I guess it's more the idea of, we thought that with DK out, oh, well, we might see something a little bit different, how guys might be used. Shoot, I thought that K9 would be used more. Nope, not the case. Who got used more in this game? Anybody?
No. Nope.
Charbonnet, maybe?
You know who got used in this game? Ryan Grubb's reputation got used in this game. The entire game. Like that's what got used. Because, again, just kind of gave up on it in terms of the run game. I don't care if you're having success or not. Like, it's something that you got to start to do to be able to do it. And it's just frustrating, especially when you don't have a DK in there. I don't know what JSN does well. He does everything okay. Like, he's not a bad player.
No, he's a nice receiver. I think where he seemingly has the most success are those in breaking routes, 6-7 yards.
Yeah.
And, that's where we see him at least have that kind of success. I thought we might see more Chenault. Please don't use Chenault downfield at all.
Guess not. Yeah, you're right. I was wrong.
You go look at his tape. The dude doesn't catch beyond 5 yards downfield. And it didn't matter that it was raining or not. That's just demonstrably what he's done in the past. I want to see him used as the gadget guy, but that didn't happen in this game either. Yeah, it was an offensively frustrating day. And the fact that K9 rushes for 12 yards, Geno leading rusher was 16.
Yeah.
Even Sharp's only 4 yards. So it's.
Oh, if only we'd put in Sam Howell, it probably would have been better.
I think people just wanted Sam Howell in there at the end because they knew that it was a lost cause.
Oh, that's fine.
when it gets to a certain point, people want to see something different.
Okay, that's fine. And I do think there's merit to the DK changes the way they defend you argument for sure. I mean, DK is a special player and a really, really good wide receiver, one of the elites. You can rank him wherever you'd like in there. That's fine. I think at the end of the day, where I'm at now, Brandon, is I don't think that in the next 3 years, if we don't do some major things to this team, that it's worth paying a perimeter player like DK the type of money that he's going to need coming up, and maybe just trade him and try to get some pieces to get the trenches going. Because if you never get that addressed, then what's the point of having DK Metcalf at all other than jersey sales?
Jersey sales. I think it's important to have. I always enjoy having those veteran dudes who can stay with the team and perform at a high level, especially if they are continuing to perform at a high level.
Oh, this isn't a knock on DK or in his performance in any way.
No, it's about needing the extra draft capital, right?
Exactly.
But the thing is, look across the line. Did the Buffalo Bills spend a whole lot of draft capital on that offensive line for Josh Allen? Nope.
It's true. It's true.
So you don't need to do that.
I mean, they invested some money into it, and there's a few teams who have done it well. It's kind of getting to the point to where you're like, how is it that we have been this consistently bad at offensive line for this long? And the easy thing is to just point at John Schneider, and I think there's merit to that. I mean, again, in the offseason, before people were really looking at all this stuff and see the results, Brandon, you were out there. You were the dude being like, excuse me, we're letting Dame Lou walk out the building? Like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And golly, were you right? Holy smokes.
Well, after watching Luke Jokel come to this team so many years ago and seeing how bad that worked out, I wasn't so excited about bringing in more guards. And yeah, he didn't seem like he was a big difference maker on the offensive line, but in one area, I'm kind of with John Schneider in that, I think you can find guards out there that probably can perform and do Dame Lou's job, I don't know, 80% for 50% of the cost. And is that worth the trade-off? Maybe. But you got to find the dude that can do that and be willing to come to Seattle. And it doesn't always work out. So,
well, you got to spend more than a third round draft pick every 4 years at the offensive line, right? The one draft that he did actually put some draft capital into, we got Charles Cross, who's the only thing worth keeping on this offensive line, and Abe Lucas, who was really good. It just, his niece says no. Yeah. There's your evidence right there. You got some bad luck with the injury, but other than that, there's your evidence.
Yeah. And I want you to stay hopeless in the fact that Abe can come back, because it almost feels like there's potential on the horizon. This
is all just a big tease. It's a big tease. This is what they do with my favorite player.
You're reverse jinx this into happening. I could feel it.
I don't even have that in my head. It's just not going to happen. Yeah.
All right. Well, when I think about things that aren't going to happen, I'm looking ahead to a game against the Los Angeles Rams and thinking, as much as I wanted that win to come early, man, the Rams are getting healthy at just the right time and having extra days off. They're on a two-game win streak coming into this game against the Seahawks. And I wish I could put all my reverse jinx power into getting this win over the Rams.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I meant to ask you earlier in the show, is this rock bottom for this year?
It felt like rock bottom sitting in the stands and listening to the stupid Bills fans chants. Let's go, Buffalo.
Okay. I mean, it rhymes, I guess. Or, it's no Seahawks.
Have you heard these Bills chants before?
I try to tune them out.
You should, because I'm glad that you're not a longtime Bills fan. who would participate. I couldn't see you participating in these call-in responses that Bills fans have to do.
There's only one that I'll do, and it's Seahawks, and it's tough. It's tough. Like I gotta rally deep for it. Like I'm not into being cajoled into saying something, but at the end of the day, I ask you, rock bottom. The reason I ask is because I kind of feel like after this game going into the bye week, I think this is where rock bottom is.
You think if our Seahawks lose to the Rams once again, a feeling that we are so very, very familiar with, that would be rock bottom?
Yep. And a whole 2 weeks to stew on it. And I think it's a good position for Coach Mike to be in, oddly enough. Like at that point, you can kind of start thumping skulls and doing some different things. Maybe it's not even thumping skulls, but just making big changes in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. And you've got the time to kind of go through it. And with the urgency of being owned by the McVanahans, which he was brought here to beat, didn't take care of Shanahan, and he was the one he was good against with Baltimore. I shudder to think what's going to happen against our daddy, Sean McVay.
Yeah, as much as I want to play the game of where might rock bottom be when we have a game against the Rams, Niners, and Cardinals all coming up in a row, and thinking it could just be after the Rams. I don't think I want to play that game.
Okay. All right.
But with the Rams coming up, that was one of the things that that was one of the things that I reflected on a little bit, was, how were the Ravens against the Rams when Coach Mike was coaching that Ravens defense? And the answer is not great.
Not great.
No. The Ravens just put up more points and they needed overtime to do it in that 37-31 overtime win last year when Kyron Williams ran all over the Ravens defense and Cooper Kupp put up over 200 yards combined of offense along with Puka Nacua.
Yeah, so for the remainder of this podcast, I'm going to refer to Puka and Cooper as Puka Kupp because they're just one dude that's going to make life hell for us throughout this entire game. Having them come back healthy this last week, I mean, that's all Stafford needs because Stafford is freaking awesome. He just is. And he's good under pressure. So even if the Seahawks are able to generate that good pressure rate as they have for the majority of the season, Stafford will still make you pay. And if that's the case, once they have those two guys, then people can't load up on Williams. And, and he's good enough to look good from time to time. And I don't have a lot of faith defensively going into this week, but I do have some faith offensively. I do think that this Rams defense with no Aaron Donald, they can sit there and tell me all they want that versus fantastic, which I'm sure he's a fine player and all that.
Oh, he's good.
But he's not Aaron freaking Donald. No. He's not Aaron freaking Donald.
No, and people point to Verse having a really good game against the Minnesota Vikings on Thursday Night Football.
Without Darisaw?
Without Darisaw. That's the first thing that I thought of. I was like, well, yeah, he did well. He had a backup left tackle, and they had to go out and try and convince the Jaguars to give up theirs to try and fill in behind on the Vikings after getting beat so badly by a rookie.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if they're going to take Verse, move him over to the other side then, and just put him up against whoever's going to end up playing right tackle this next week.
It's probably Jarrell again.
Think so?
Think so.
Sounded like Fant might be kind of sort of close.
It kind of. I didn't get that impression, though, from Mike's press conference on Wednesday that he would be back.
Okay.
It seemed more. And that's one thing that I've noticed. I think the media has finally broken Coach Mike into talking about injuries in some sort of way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because he's actually either they found out ways around to get him to talk about it. So now that he just finally answers the questions because they ran down a list of dudes and were like, how about Trey Brown? How about George Fant? Yeah. I think we aren't going to get Fant this week.
Okay. Do you think he's finally just come to the conclusion, look, it's not worth the effort of dancing around these questions for the 0.1% of a competitive advantage that it may or may not give us?
Yeah, maybe at this point of the season, recognizing that. Yeah, the fact that wondering how many snaps that Christian Haynes might get over Anthony Bradford, the opposing defense probably not going to care.
No, other than just like, oh, look at that. That guy still stinks too. Like, let's put one of our better guys over there.
He does appear to have been talked into giving injury answers now. But are there any other injuries? I think from a health standpoint, you're doing okay.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that does give me a tiny bit of hope defensively is the idea that Puka plays a lot in the slot, or either him or, either one of Puka Cup.
Yeah.
And that means that maybe we get a really involved spoon game finally, since teams just seem to not do anything towards him in any way, shape, or form, just to keep him uninvolved.
Yeah, I think that will remain consistent this week, especially. I know that people are excited that Job hasn't been a dumpster fire, but he's been bad enough that he's targeted significantly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not like he went out there and became another shutdown corner. He's been a guy who's been backup level worthy. Like, that's the type of backup that you want, that can come in and be serviceable, going to give up some plays, maybe even make a couple. That's a bonus for a backup. Oh yeah. And away you go.
Yeah. He got the interception. The other thing he's been really good at is when dudes catch it on him, he doesn't miss tackles. So those are two nice things, but still, when you're being targeted as much, and when you have a shutdown guy like Witherspoon, and even Woolen had a bad game, and it wasn't even that terrible of a game. It was just that he got beat really good by Keon in the end zone. Which was a great catch.
About the touchdown?
Huh?
Oh, that was an awesome catch. That's not that Woolen got beat badly.
Wasn't even Woolen. Being, because he was in position, he got his arm in there, and Keon just made a great catch.
He made a great catch. Like, that's just hats off to the other team. Like, at some point, there's plays like that you can't really just put on your guy. The problem I have with Woolen at this point is every time they run a bubble, where do they run the bubble to?
His side, yeah.
Yeah. And it looks bad.
And that's another thing that has me concerned about the Rams, is that it's a very similar style of offense. Like, they run those quick screens just as well as the Bills do. And we're going to get a heavy dose of that. Oh, man.
Buckle up. We're going to get a lot of Kyron. We're going to get a lot of bubbles and short stuff. And then they're going to do exactly like the Bills did. Start to suck you up a little bit with that, and then hit shots. And it's going to be, Nakua Cup down the field. And it's going to be unbelievably frustrating. And I'm not looking forward to this game in any way, shape, or form, especially when our home field advantage has disappeared for the last 3 years. That's just gone now.
Why did people just now this week decide that our home field advantage is gone? Like that, it was a topic, not just in Seattle, and maybe it was because I think Gino mentioned it in one of his quotes, but it was on Pat McAfee. It was in every single one of the Seattle area papers.
Yeah.
It's been gone for a while. This is not new.
Yes. I think the idea is that the stat evened up to 19-19 with the record so far this year. And so it looks on paper. A little more convincing. I think that's probably why. How do you feel about this team in the run game against the Rams? Can they be more like they were in the Falcons game? Because that's what the thing that this is the stupid fan hope in the back of my head, Brandon. It keeps popping up. I'm like, well, I mean, the Rams are much more akin to the Falcons than they are to the Bills. Like, we smoked the Falcons. Like, we could beat these guys. What are we talking about here? Like, they could get the run game going a little bit and do some stuff. Like, is there anything to that narrative, Brandon, or am I just being a crazy delusional fan? Like,
I think that this has the potential to be a lot more like the Falcons game than it does the Bills game. And it does come down to, I think the Bills are more physical in the run game. I think that I think that Stafford can be rattled into some turnovers. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
shoot, we did see it from Allen. He did put the ball on the ground, twice. One was called back because of a stupid penalty. The other time he kicked it to his teammate, and then he threw a pick to Job. So even in this last game, they were getting the ball on the ground. They just have to be able to convert that in the same way that they were able to make it work against the Falcons. And then it just comes down to outscoring them.
Yeah, at that point. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is that the Bills are a middling run defense team, and the Rams are literally like one spot off of them. Like, they're just neck and neck, and we couldn't do jack against Buffalo there. Sounds like there's a decent chance of DK being back. When I say decent, like at least 50-50.
Do you want DK back, or would you prefer to have him rest? I know, like, we want and need healthy DK against the Rams, or maybe want is the strongest word. But due to his injury and just the idea of having the bye week, doesn't it make more sense to not have DK than to have him? I'm talking sense versus want.
Okay. In the world of sense, if you are planning on re-signing DK Metcalf this offseason,
yeah,
to a big deal, you rest his ass this game. There's no way you put him out there. If you plan on letting him walk, you trot his ass out there if he thinks he can go.
I don't know if we'll be able to necessarily make a case one way or the other, because maybe he's just fine enough to go this week.
Yeah, that could be.
But I'm kind of with you in that sense. I'm also with the way that these edges are with Byron Young, with Jared Verse. These guys, in terms of their missed tackle percentage on the season, I have a feeling that K9 up against them has a better chance for making those guys miss than maybe we saw against the Bills. So even though they're maybe right next to each other in terms of middling defenses, I think the missed tackle percentage is higher when it comes to the Rams.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially with a rookie like Verse out there. He hasn't ever seen anybody like Kenneth Walker III. I guarantee you he has not. And that's going to be startling for a young man just getting his feet wet in the league here. And when it comes to Young, he's so unbelievably overrated. Like, he's a fine player. Like, I'm not saying he's a terrible player, but everybody acts like, he's Lawrence Taylor out there. Like, Byron Young's okay. He's okay.
I don't. I think just because, he has the draft pedigree of being drafted highly, and he's gone out there and, on a Thursday night game, he performed. And so anytime you perform in prime time, your stock is going to get bumped up a little bit.
Yeah, I see that. Overall, I mean, he's a fine player, just not, he's not a game changer in my opinion. Would I rather have Boye Mafe or Brian Young? I'd rather have Boye Mafe every time. Like, that's not even close.
No. But if you're a delusional Rams fan, you think that these guys that they're going to take over for Aaron Donald, your defense is going to be awesome, and that's just how it's going to be.
Well, the only thing that's annoying about delusional Rams fan is that they might be proven right for a week coming into Seattle, where we haven't beaten the Rams since, I don't know, FDR was president, it feels like. It's so frustrating.
We got the one. We got the one when they missed the field goal at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And then we got the other one when Charlie Whitehurst was our quarterback. I think, and we got some other LOB ones in there too, but.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, like, it's been a minute.
I could pull up the exact history if you really want to know.
No, I'm good. I'm good with it.
let's just
I
see
hate
what
this
happens.
team so much.
We have our irrational fan hope that things are going to be great this weekend. Let's just lean on that.
How much of a bonus is it for Coach Mike to come away with a division win here going into the bye week? Like
this would be huge.
It's massive.
Then we're going to be back riding high again. Coach Mike's going to be awesome. And here we have a whole bye week ahead of a game against the Niners. We come out of that. This is why it's a roller coaster this season. And I'm here for it. It's fun.
I'm present. I keep trying to find like the line of like, okay, what's reasonable with this team and let's stick with it. And they keep kicking me in the teeth.
No, let's ride the highs. We'll ride the lows. Let's just take it as it comes.
I don't like it.
Well, I mean, last season wasn't all that great either.
Well, okay, fine. But is this team more talented this year than last year, would you say?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. How many wins do you think they have with Pete this year? I've heard this question asked a few times, and I find it to be mildly interesting.
Oh, gosh. We probably have one more right now. We probably have that win over the Giants.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, not that much different.
But hey, if they just get rid of him, they're going to the Super Bowl. So,
let's get to the second half of the show.
All right.
As we get into the second half of the show, man, that was it felt good to get that out after again coming off that loss to the Bills and then looking ahead to a Rams team that's just getting healthy. It's just I could feel it building in me, and now I've had that opportunity to get it out. Hopefully, it made others feel better too that might be in that similar headspace.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Because I definitely do. Like that had been kind of stewing around in the back of the noodle there for the last couple days here since that god awful loss, and now I can go into this game and just have like a YOLO type attitude like Connor Williams in his snaps.
Oh my gosh, that snap over Geno's head, like he was. I think if Geno were 15 feet tall, I don't know if he would have been able to come down with that. But I did have a different vantage point of it.
Oh, God, it was like stradoop, just straight up. And then not only that, but like, you know how for sure that Geno gets the ball there?
How's that?
Oh, you get your ass under center instead of screwing around in the gun on the goal line.
What, so he can get stepped on?
Well, then there's that. God, there's just no answers, man. That's right. This Sunday against the Rams, YOLO. Who cares?
There were some people saying, "Oh, when K9 gets that, he's got to just throw it away, so that way you don't take the loss." It's like,
yeah, okay.
Dude has two defensive linemen like chasing him down. He is not a natural thrower of the football. No. Granted, you're probably in a pretty good position that there were at least dudes down the field, but K9 has to get in a position to throw it and get it past the line of scrimmage with a couple of defenders chasing him down. No, thank you. I think the outcome was about as good as it could have been.
Yeah, I think for K9 there, first your instincts just kick in, and his instincts are to run the damn ball, right? Right. So like, yeah, he's gonna have a hard time
run the
not
ball,
doing that.
Try and make as many dudes miss as I can.
That's right. That's right. Second, I've never seen K9 throw the rock, so I don't know what his arm looks like. I'm gonna guess he's probably worse than Sam Howell. So I don't need him throwing it there. And so don't compound the mistake, right? At that point, probably for the best there, Kenan.
It probably was for the best. They ended up getting a field goal out of it. But yeah, just it's frustrating because you look at a couple of those things, and I know it feels weird now going back and talking more Bill stuff, but gosh, you get some touchdowns there. It does feel like a different game. You don't have the turnover with the interception. Yeah, maybe you're in it for a little while longer, and then maybe you don't feel as bad than going into the Rams game.
Hey, if you're competitive, it does make you feel a lot better. When you get your doors blowing off, like, yeah, it's hard to get juiced up for that one. Yeah. And it just, the players don't feel like they have that sort of energy either.
In terms of the type of loss that you could take then going into a divisional game, I kind of like that idea that they could turn it all around. And if they can build all that frustration and take it out on the stupid Rams, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Look, let's go that route. I'd love that. I would love for this team to continue to make things completely unpredictable at all freaking times. And this is a great place to start.
Well, the Cardinals unpredictably, or maybe predictably, beat the Dolphins. You know, we can get into our picks a little bit later, but I think we both picked the Cardinals to win, and then they proved us right by kicking a last-second field goal against the Dolphins.
Yeah. Did you see that epic underthrow by Tua to Tyreek Hill down the left sideline?
No, I think that was second half, and I missed the entire second half.
Okay. Yeah. I just don't understand how he's an NFL quarterback. I don't.
Did you see who else they have on that team? Because we saw that while he was injured.
Well, it's not my fault that they have no other quarterbacks either.
Another frustrating thing about this weekend. Let's talk about another thing, Adam.
Yeah.
The fact that every single other team in the division got a win this week.
Freaking nonsense, man. Hurts my feelings. I don't like it at all. Cowboys, you can never count on the freaking Cowboys for nothing.
No.
Like, God, just worthless star.
We were riding in the car on the way back home and listening to the game, and the Niners got out to a point where, like, screw it, turn the game off. It's not worth listening to. The Cowboys are done. And then my brother looks down at his phone and he's like, oh, they're within 6 points. And then we turn it back on the radio and then they give it away. Just enough to give you hope.
I had the similar experience, turned it off right about probably when you guys did. Noticed the score later and did not turn it back on because I was like, stupid Cowboys, like, not worth my time.
You made the right call because it was only for disappointment.
Yeah.
And we talked about the Rams enough.
Yeah. God, freaking Rams.
Let's talk about something good, like our members of the flock, Adam.
That sounds good, man. I'm you keep saying I'm here for it. I'm here for that. Let's do that.
They went to getintheflock.com. They're helping to support the show. You can even support the show for free by going there and signing up. But if you do support us at $3 and above, it helps get you into our Discord chat where we are on game day. 12 and above gets you into our Facebook Ring of Honor group. And we even have some executive producers that get some benefits of being called our executive producers. DCH, Brian Shaw, Ryan Peterson, our live executive producer out on YouTube, JC Schilling and the 313th, who I got to meet in person this week, and Brian Lowry. And a big thanks to JC for executive producing our dinner as well on Saturday night.
Hey, that's really amazing, dude. Like, thank you again for that. No doubt about it. Wish I could have been there. Right about when you guys were dinnering, I was on hour 3 of NyQuil-induced sleep.
Yeah, that's no fun. I wish more flockers could have been there for it. Now, maybe JC wouldn't have executive produced the entire dinner if we had more people there. But you never know when you show up for a dinner with a group, what might happen. And big thanks to JC. Big thanks to EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football who showed up and hung out for a bit too. It was a good time having dinner there in Tukwila. I was disappointed. I got an email from Carly who in her town name says Renton. Like, that's not that far away. I didn't see Carly at the meetup on Saturday night.
Well, we all know who to blame then for the loss. That feels like a car problem. Yeah. She's not bought it. She's not a team player. So
I'm going to save your email for next week, Carly, because 1, it's a better bye-week topic, and 2, I'm mad at you.
Yeah. I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed.
Got to see Amy there as well. Got to see some of our other flockers at the game day meetup. Flocktimus Prime brought Flocktimus Alpha, is that what comes after Prime, to his first game.
I don't know. You're the military guy. You should know.
I thought that was more of like a space thing.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe math. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like math. No wonder I don't know crap about it.
I think it might be a Greek math thing.
Oh, yeah. No, Greek and math? No, that's more than all Greek to me.
Got to see RJ and his family. They're always good for coming to the meetups. Lisa.
That's awesome, man.
And Greg. And gosh, just a good crew there. Got to see Chad. He brought both his kids.
No, that's awesome, man. Sorry I missed Chad and everybody else there. You'd mentioned EJ was there. And I think really about the only solace as Seahawks fans that we've had this week is knowing that Bears fans lost in a equally as brutal way.
Yeah, maybe even a more brutal way, right? On a last second.
A 70-yard Hail Mary? 70 yards?
I mean, even Bears defenders thought there was no chance it was going to happen, and then it happened.
Oh, my gosh. I saw that clip of that dude just walking around, taunting the fans, and they're like, Jaden ran around for 12 seconds, and he turned around, he's like, oh, I guess the ball's coming, and like, yeah, still completed it. That's
a tough way to lose a game. Tough loss for our flockers. I don't think I mentioned Dave and Don were there yet, and Joe and Kayla. So I think that about rounded out the group. Also made it over to Drunken Pizza after the game. A good little place to hang out, and we had fun up there. Definitely looking forward to doing it again.
No, I'm sorry I missed it, but then again, because I missed it, it's probably my fault that it all happened.
Well, you also missed out on getting drenched, leaving the stadium and walking to the pizza place.
Yeah, being sick, that didn't sound like a good time when I found out it was going to rain. That was the other part of it.
Yeah, there were parts that worked out for you.
Yeah.
Big thanks and welcome to the flock to Robert Hashusta, who's in at $12.12 a month. So welcome to the flock to Robert.
Oh, heck yeah, man. No, appreciate that, Robert. And he didn't just dip a toe in being a little flocker. He became a full-fledged little flocker.
And, the other thing, I got to meet Nick at Bread and Bone in North Bend. New restaurant that opened up. He said it had been open for a week, and it's steadily been improving as they've been open through the week. So, yeah, got to stop in there and have a meal before our get-together Saturday night. So that was fun.
That's exciting. Again, I'm actually excited to have stops at both ends of my journey now out to the Seattle area where little flocker discounts apply between Guaranteed Barbecue and now Bread and Bone. Like, this is great. This is great.
The great thing about Bread and Bone is that they have beer and they have one of the best pretzels that I've ever had.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Perfect combo.
That is a good combo. I wasn't quite sure the cuisine, just based off the name, but
yeah, flatbread. They had flatbread salads, and then for the appetizers, I know they had the pretzel. They had a charcuterie board, and I think there's probably one other thing that I was thinking of, but the main thing: flatbread salads and the big pretzel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm definitely gonna stop in there one of these days.
All right. What do you say we get into some Pick'em League and welcome in our overlord, Evie. Dear underlings, I don't know what happened this week. I've seen Dad mad when the Seahawks lose. I've also seen him disappointed and frustrated. But this week, he was just sad. What did they do? One thing that made me sad this week, or should I say one person, was the very hungry grubber who picked against the Seahawks. Brandon, you know what to do. Change their pick to the Seahawks. I'd like to think that one person, Bad Hawkra, may have made the difference, but looking at how sad Dad was, I'm guessing it was more than one person's Bad Hawkra that caused it. One winner this week, Matthew Marks, the only person who had 13 correct picks. Well done, Matthew. I agree with Brandon's premise last week. Those shirts should go to people with perfect weeks. However, I would say let's wait until the end of the season in case we have any more perfect pick weeks and need to find an extra big prize. Overall, boys, Blitz Brigade is still in first with 84 correct points, but has been joined by three others in joint first place. Well done to I Like to Touch My Bobo, Stumptown Hawker, and Wirehawks, who have closed the two-pick gap from last week. There are 4 more, 1 pick back on 83 picks in joint 5th place. Dad is one of them and asked me to stop the season right now as he would win a prize for the first time ever. I told him if he carried on whining, I'd find a way to take a pick off him. Have a great week. Go Hawks from Evie.
That's great, Evie. Appreciate the update and everything. We're really only the one little flocker getting out of line here. I did get a text from Brocco Jared, and today he said he's now only down 4 picks in the Pick'em League, and I quote, "I'm going to beat down this Hawks League and take names." And I think he's getting a little too big for his britches. So I think this needs to turn against him here, like, because I can't have this in my life.
Yeah. Well, I felt good just by the fact that I tied you, and so I stopped a little bit of the bleeding this past week.
Congratulations. I cannot seem to do the same on Prop Stars. I just continue to bleed out like a patient that you can't save.
You even tried to take a relatively safe bet of Seahawks plus 9.5, and that didn't even come close to happening.
Nope, not even close, stupid. That was a bad bet. That was dumb. Just wait till you see my strategy this week. You're gonna love it.
Are you just gonna start taking unders and taking Geno interception bets?
I was looking to see if I can find a bet on how many tears I cry every Sunday when the Seahawks play like that. I have yet to find it. Like, that'd be the best one.
That would be a good one.
Yeah.
Well, we got a couple good emails from Hugh, the Overlord's father, as well as Carly, but I do want to save some emails for next week with the bye coming up. So just want to acknowledge those came through. And if you want to help contribute to that bye week episode, go Hawks at SeahawkersPodcast.com. I will recognize, though, the Bard who has come in, because he came in with a short one this week, just to say hi, fellas. I hope you all had the best day that you could manage. The game was rubbish, and so was the weather. Newcastle played in the afternoon and got beat by Chelsea. And so did the Seahawks. In fact, you could say we got pissed on both on and off the park. What can I say? Onwards and upwards, and let's piss on the Rams. In hope, the Bard.
Absolutely. I want to channel my inner Calvin and pee on the Rams this week.
Yeah. Does that have the same meaning in English as it does for us?
To piss on something?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's technically the same thing, but like the feeling of it isn't like literal piss on you. It's more like, piss off, kind of that sort of thing. Yeah. It's my guess.
It's a good guess.
I don't know. We've happened to watch a couple British series lately, and I think I'm getting a feel for it, like a little more. Yeah.
Right. On to do better and better at life.
All right, man. My do better for this week is for Robert Schock, 39 of Washington State. And I saw this headline, and at first I was like, this is amazing. The headline was, man was missing for a month in National Park, but his mom never lost hope. And then he was found alive. So I can make him I do better because he's found alive. So keep that in mind. Like, I'm not being that big of a jerk. But this dude, he decides that he's going to go out into the North Cascades. And this was his quote, "I'm an ultra runner. I'm not a hiker. I don't put on backpacks, and I don't go out for multiple day trips. I don't know how to fish. I want to finish a course as fast as I can and come back home. So I had no shirt. I had a pair of shorts. I had Freddie, his dog, and a dog pan. Those were the only items in my small backpack when I went out into the freaking woods." Like, what are you doing? Ultra run with at least a shirt. Like, put it in a fanny pack or something. Like, what are you doing? So not only that, he goes out and he starts at the Hannigan Trailhead. And I looked this up on the Onyx app. It was looking at the terrain. And if you've ever lived in mountainous country, spent some time in the mountains, like, you kind of get a feel of like what you might or might not do if you were, I don't know, lost out in the woods, like after a day. So he goes up this trail, up this that started in one drainage.
Yeah.
Goes up and over a little mini pass, drops down into the next drainage where he finds the trail that he was looking for. But later on, there were some burn areas, kind of loses the trail. but it all runs in these narrow, steep valleys with like creeks that run just right down the middle of them and trails that run right down the freaking bottom of them. So this dude gets on the other side of this ridge and becomes quote unquote disoriented and can't figure out what to do and stays out there for 30 freaking days. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, it shouldn't have taken him longer than a week to go, I don't know, maybe I'll walk downstream. Because you are bound to run into a road or a person or a cabin, something. If you just go downstreams to bigger streams than to roads. That's how it works. If you've been in the mountains at all, and there's no way. Like, if you get down in one of these little valleys up here in the North Cascades, it's much like it is here. You can't, like, magically wander out of the valley. Like, these are tall-ass valleys, like mountains around the valleys. Just unbelievably stupid. Goes out unprepared, can't figure out how to walk his ass out in 30 freaking days. He wasn't even injured. He was just disoriented.
I thought that's what you were going to tell me, that he was running and like hurt his ankle and so he just couldn't move very well. But you're telling me that it was only disorientation.
Yeah. Yep. And took him 30 days to figure out. He didn't even figure it out. He got found by like some Sierra Club hikers or some nonsense. Like when he was just about to give up and he heard some people and yelled out, I'm dumb. It's so stupid. I've never read a rescue story of like somebody in the mountains and been so annoyed.
That is a little annoying. That guy needs to do better.
Yeah.
My do better this week is for Anthony Richardson, no longer the starter in Indianapolis. And while this may not be the exact reason why, I think it should be a big part of the decision, because with 4 minutes, 36 seconds left in the third quarter this past week, the Colts were first and goal from the 10-yard line. There was a 2-yard run by Jonathan Taylor. On second and goal, there was a penalty that pushed him back 13 yards. I'm getting into this because the quote that I heard from Anthony Richardson, and I'll play it here in a second. Maybe we should get into it now because this was the quote. So I heard this quote first before I went back and realized what exactly had happened as to why he took himself off the field in the third quarter of a football game. And this was all the context that I had going into this because I hadn't watched the game. I just heard the question of why he tapped out of the football game.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there that I did, and I don't think I was gonna be able to go that next play. So I just, just told saying I just needed a break right there.
Okay, so he says, "I'm not gonna lie, I was tired." And so when I heard that, I was thinking, "Oh man, Richardson runs a lot. Did he have this breakout run where he went 70 yards downfield, and then they got up to the line, and then he had a situation where he got into having to run it again, and it was just like the dude was gassed, right? Like that's the picture that I had in my mind. And then I find out there was a penalty on second down. So penalties, that gives you plenty of time to rest after a play. Shoot, a Texans player was injured that they had to get that taken care of. So again, there was another extended period before they run second and goal. Then Richardson has a second and goal. He scrambles around a little bit before finding Alec Pierce in the end zone. Again, he had to scramble a little bit, but there was a penalty. So for an offensive pass interference. So again, a little bit of a break. So now they're second and goal from the 23. He drops back, has to shake off a defender at the 38, which big offensive lineman, and really impressive that he was able to shake it off, get out of a sack. And then he runs back to the line of scrimmage at the 23-yard line. And that's when he gets up and taps his helmet to get subbed out. He wasn't limping or anything. So he was tired. He was tired after breaking a tackle and getting back to the line of scrimmage. Old man Flacco has to come into the game on third down and do the give up play handoff because that would have been so hard for Richardson to do.
Right.
So for all of you wishing that we had maybe drafted Richardson instead of Devin Witherspoon. I am almost willing to guarantee that Geno Smith from this point forward will start more games, be better statistically, and generally have more success than Anthony Richardson, a quarterback who had to come out of the game because he's out of breath after having to shake a defender. That dude's not going to make it. Anthony Richardson, do better.
Yeah, I'd seen the story. I'd seen the quote, and I was like, dang, what did he do on the run? Like, did he, juke 5 dudes and, basically pull a Lamar, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. No, not really. I mean, him shirking off the big-ass defensive lineman, impressive.
Very impressive.
Like, that was a show of strength, no doubt about it. But you're right. Just scrambles up to the original line of scrimmage and kind of crumples down, and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Then he's tapping out. And I didn't even think about it in the terms of, you're right, the next play probably would be a third, and it was a third down, give up play run. Like, yeah, you take your breathers in. Is old man Flacco tapping out?
We're going to find out because he's the starter going forward.
Oh, I'm sure he is. Look, and here's the thing. Like, a lot of to-do has been made about this story, and I think it's not like there's no there. Like, it is important to a degree. But don't get it twisted. In no way, shape, or form is this the primary reason he is being benched.
Oh, no.
The reason he's being benched is he couldn't throw it in the ocean if he was standing on the end of a dock. Like, couldn't do it. There's no possible way. Everybody who was banging the table for AR in the draft process, oh, but look at him. Look at all the amazing things he can do. Yeah, but he can't play quarterback. But look, he hit the ceiling. You don't know what you're looking at in quarterbacks. And stop getting enamored by the toolsy guy instead of the dudes who can play quarterback. This is the juxtaposition of these two guys is the perfect demonstration of this. Anthony Richardson and Brock freaking Purdy. I remember watching Brock and being like, well, I like that guy a little bit. He could probably play a little bit. Watching AR and being like, oh, nope, not in a million years and never over Geno Smith. Never, ever, 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 ever. And it's definitely proving out that way.
Would you take a trade if the Colts said right now AR for Sam Howell straight up?
Yes.
You'd take that?
Yes.
Okay.
Only because in 5 years, if you don't play AR and you just let him, practice, like he does have that sort of upside where it's like, maybe.
Okay.
It's super unlikely that he will ever reach that. Like, what, under 10%? Sam Howell to me is under 5%.
Okay. I guess I was just thinking of it in terms of who ends up having the more successful career going forward.
Neither.
All right. Fair enough. On to Better at Life.
All right, man. My Better at Life this week is for somebody that has made this selection many, many times throughout the history of the show. That's our former quarterback, man, Russell Carrington-Wilson. Look, man, these last 2 weeks with the Steelers, coming back and playing well. I kind of knocked him a little bit the first game because the deep ball, while Pickens bailed him out, like he hit him, I guess. This last week, deep ball looked a lot better. Like he was actually getting out in front of his receivers and was playing a version of old Russ. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to see after he was absolutely just desecrated by everybody and their dog during his time in Denver, after he survived maybe the most incompetent head coaching hire in NFL coaching history. Like Urban Meyer, the worst, just because of like, he's a horrible human, but more competent than say Nathaniel Hackett, who just, he didn't know anything about nothing. Like survived that, and then survived a year of Sean Payton, who literally hates everything that he does in terms of playing quarterback, wants no part of it. Then finally gets to the Steelers where they're like, yeah, man, we'll play the brand of ball that suits your skill set, play action, run the ball, like good defense. And all of a sudden it all comes together and Russ looks like old Russ and he looks happy. He looks good. And I'm happy for him, man. So to Russell Carrington-Wilson, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I am here for the Russell Wilson redemption arc. We'll have to see how that goes. It's going to be tough in the AFC with teams like the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs. But I think even just getting to the playoffs and winning a game is a nice little redemption arc for Russ.
But once you get past Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, and Steelers, who is there?
It might be you threw the Steelers in there. Yeah, it feels like those 4 teams.
That's it. The rest of the AFC is pretty bad.
Chargers might compete. That's mostly the teams that I'd bring up are like, oh, well, they might compete.
Yeah, like the Broncos, the Chargers,
Bengals, if they can get it turned around and play defense.
I don't think they're gonna.
I don't think so either. But
yeah, they need that. That season was screwed the second that Joe Burrow dyed his hair.
He ruined it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looked like Tom Cruise in that one movie where he's a hitman and he dyed it all blonde and it was weird.
Yeah.
Same thing happened here.
I thought he was going for a Cody Rhodes impression from WWE, but you may not get that reference.
I didn't. Nope.
Well, I'm going to close the show with my Better at Life this week, and it is Skip Bayless related, the namesake for this segment. My Better at Life this week is for the community notes people out on X, formerly known as Twitter. And Skip tried to get a take past the community when he said this past week that, quote, I said when Detroit got Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 in the first round, that was a steal. Now he's the most explosive back in the NFL. So quick, so shifty when underrated bash and crash between the tackle. Oh, so quick, so shifty with underrated bash and crash between the tackles. The thing is that Skip didn't say that he was a steal. In fact, as community notes mentioned, even pulling up one of Skip Bayless's old tweets saying that Skip thought Gibbs was a fine player, but the Lions probably should have waited till 18 or 34. Skip definitely didn't think this was a steal. For Twitter community notes, you are better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, man. Thank you to those folks for sure, because a little accountability in the talking face arena is always nice. It's a little bit why I brought up what I did earlier in the show of just like, what did people tell you before? What's happening now? And what are their positions? Like, just keep that in mind. And I love that they did that to Skip. And that's a lot of fun.
See, it doesn't even have to be like political takes of lies of a big or small. This is a tiny little Skip Bayless lie, but it doesn't even get past the goalposts in this one. They find his old tweet and post it right under his take.
Wait, I thought everything on X was like really right-wing bad or something or whatever they say. I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I don't really wade into those waters.
Well, you're on X, right?
Yeah. With all, I don't know, dude. I'm just happy.
I don't either. I'm not on it. I'm just telling you what I've heard. Yeah.
I'm just happy that this is our last show before the election. This is our last main flagship show. Starting next week, it's over.
It is. And you know what's going to change, Brandon? It's going to be outrageous. Nothing.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.